in the last few years, I know you can't see it well, but I'll just give you an idea of it. But what I did was I created a workbook for our players, and I would go through, instead of giving them all the details, I would just kind of go through and highlight or just give them just a field diagram or words or whatever. So then when we would install, they would just basically create their own playbook. So I want them to be active learners. I didn't want them to just sit there and just, okay, read through it, because I wanted them to put down words that was going to help them remember what we're trying to get across. Because there's some words that's going to register to me that's not going to register to you. But you've got certain terminologies from the past or whatever that you can write that down, so then as it works through, then it kind of meshes together, they remember it, and then they come along. So the big thing was to be active learners, so that's what this was all about. And then every year I adjusted it a little bit, okay, so then that way they would know. Now, I played in an odd front in college, coached an odd front at the very beginning, switched to an even front, and now finished up with an odd front. So last 7 years, I think we're basically totally odd front. Why the transition from an even to an odd at the end was this: alignment. Okay, we were not getting the numbers alignment, the size alignment to be able to compete 70, 75 plays a game. So that's why I like to rotate and keep guys fresh that way. So instead of just having 4 guys, I basically thought, okay, you got to have a minimum 6. Ideally, it would be 8 if you're doing an even front. Odd front, okay, 6. So you can find 6 guys. Now, here's the other thing about it is you can move guys. You can adjust within the scheme of a 3 on what kind of nose. If you've got a smaller nose, then move him. And when I say move him, not only move him to the edge of the center, move him out to the inside of the guard, or cross the face of the guard and get him into the B gap. So those things can work. If you got a bigger guy, well then it all fits into that scheme. So those things, as I switched back to an odd, those were some of the big things that I looked at. How many linemen can we get? And also, what are their capabilities? Then even right now, I mean, this past season, we had 2 noses, different type of guys. Okay? One was a bigger guy that's not as quick, not as nimble. The other guy was a linebacker, wrestler. He could move. So we kind of had 2 different type of guys playing nose, and depending on who was in there, also kind of depended on what kind of movements I was doing now. Okay? What I mean by leverage. Okay? When you had a 4 front with all these 3x, 2x2s, all this stuff, sometimes with coverages, okay, certain coverages, you would lose leverage. Okay? And what I mean by leverage is to be able to force things back inside and be inside out with those guys. Have somebody be able to force everything back in. We can do that over 4, but then also if you get 2x2s, okay, now you get into 4 verticals, and that creates challenges that way. So you got to pick. And the other thing it did, as far as, and I talked about the movement with the front guys, but when you, in a 4 front, you tend to tip your coverages. Or at least that's what I found. Okay, they would get you in certain formations where they knew exactly what coverage, who was going to be the force, where the weakness was, so then all this check with me type things would get into play. In an odd front, we get balanced. Okay? You got leverage guys on both sides. You got the 2 deep guys, and now at the end, the 2 deep guys can shift over to the 3x1 to give a different look one way or the other. So that was the thing. It kind of had a built-in disguise in the odd front. You can just balance everything out, and you can bring stuff from the weak side, you can bring stuff from the strong side without really tipping the hand. And then also from a coverage standpoint, you weren't tipping your hand as much. And the big thing, like I said, was the leverage. Okay, leverage. So those were the reasons why we went to, or when I went back to an odd front. And like I said, I was very fortunate that the people that I had, as long as I could be able to defend why doing things, I was able to adjust from an even front to an odd front and do different things that way. So, now, as far as setting the defense, okay, I believe even at college, okay, I told you right now, our 1 and 2 nose were totally different guys, okay? We have tackle and end, okay? Our tackle is going to be to the field, our end is going to be to the boundary over the offensive tackle, okay? They're not going to be the same guys. Their qualities, their characteristics, their abilities, their strengths, their weaknesses are all different. So we have wide side personnel and we have boundary personnel. Okay, we don't go right and left. Now, you'll say, well, if you watch this one year, we had a guy that certain positions where we did go right and left. Well, had one guy that had a bad shoulder and he could only play on one side, so I did do that. But those are exceptions to it. If they're the best guys still with a one bad shoulder, you can protect them on one side, friggin' you do it. Okay, and you roll with it. So, but we have field personnel because it happened this year. James Ross ended up going down and being offered at Cincinnati, but he was our linebacker coach, and we had 2 linebackers, young guys, and one was the dude was fast, good, but he was more of a tunnel vision type of guy. He wasn't open to space very well. And I just said, he's probably going to be better in the boundary than he is going to be the field because it's less things for him to observe and to comprehend in the process. So that's, again, you've got field personnel, to me, you've got guys that can handle playing in space and operating in space and being able to process what's going to happen or what can happen. And then you have guys that's in the boundary, maybe not as fluid, or there's just going to be less things that's going to happen into the boundary. So that's where the field and the boundary come in. Now, progression, how do we do it? Well, it's easy when the ball's on the hash, okay, or the +2, what I want to do, if the ball is 2 steps away from the hash, it's still a hash call. But when it gets past, plus to me is into the boundary, or into the middle of the field, toward the middle of the field. So if it's hash, +2, okay, if the ball is 2 steps into the middle of the field, it's still a hash call. But once it gets inside of that, for us, okay, then it becomes a middle call. So then we look at the strength. To me, the strength is passing strength. Where is the greatest passing strength? And then, so that just goes down as far as the greater number of receivers, okay? Now, if it's 2x2, is the number 2 on one side a tight end, number 2 on the other side a skill guy. So they have to process that. If everything's even, is the back offset or not? Because sometimes those offensive guys, it's an offensive game, okay? It really is. He didn't show any of the protections where they have the offensive lineman going down and blocking the linebacker 5-6 yards from the line of scrimmage and then throwing a ball. That happens more than often in college, especially. But anyway, so you have that back that will sometimes line up right behind the guard. Then there's times where he's going to line up on the outside edge of the tackle. So if he's lining up even behind the tackle, he's able to get out into the route extremely fast. So then we look at that as a passing strength if things are all even. But if things are totally equal, Okay, we got two skills on both sides. The back is behind the quarterback. Then we look at quarterback's arm. Okay, his arm. And then that says, if it's right-handed, then we put the wide side people to the left. Okay, it becomes a left call. So we go to the strength. So that's the breakdown on how we set the defense.